So I was watching Beards and Gear the other day, and I noticed that Manny Ortiz was using an eye tracking autofocus for the A7R3 and the A9, and I was kind of thinking, well, Canon should already have this technology. They should already have some kind of eye tracking autofocus technology. They have facial recognition, tracking technology for the AI servo mode, that dual pixel autofocus in video. Because I'm shooting on the 80D right now at f1.4, and she should be tracking me pretty well. And this is autofocus in video. Now I'm usually shooting with the 7D Mark One, and it's manually focused at a certain distance, and I bob in and out of focus. So I'm starting to use the 80D for video. But with all that being said, you have this technology, class leading autofocus in video, and we can't use it for photos. I was trying to figure out why we have this software for the video, because Canon is known to be one of the video beasts, well, used to be, but we have it, and everybody's raving about this dual pixel autofocus for vlogs and all this other stuff, but we can't use it for pictures. And I know that you could probably use like live view and do some facial tracking and stuff like that in live view and get away with it in some kind of smaller way, but facial tracking is not eye recognition. Now, so when you have Sony and they're trying to recognize the eyes, that is a clear benefit for portrait photographers who are using wide primes. I'm talking about wide aperture primes. You're talking about your 1.2s, your 1.8s, and your 2.8s. All these shallow depth of field lenses will give you a nice blurry background with a nice in focus subject. But if we can't focus on our subject's eye, then there's no reason to have that attribute for our lenses, because we're always going to miss focus, and we're going to have more misses than keepers. I use the 7D Mark One, and the 7D Mark One always misses focus, even though I'm sitting there refocusing, and focusing and recompose, because our focus points are not all that great. It's like concentrated in the center, and every time you refocus and recompose with an f1.2 or f1.4 lens or f1.8 lens, you're liable to miss focus way more than 2.8 or way more than 3.5 and 5.0 and 4.0. So I want to take portraits with a nice blurry background closer to the full frame image quality. So if my camera could track the eye of the person while I'm trying to get focus and composition and making sure the model looks good and she has a good pose, or whether it be a subject that has a good expression or a moment with a shallow depth of field, all these other things, I can't be bogged down whether the camera's in focus or I lock focus or anything like that, because if I put it in AI servo, it's going to keep bobbing everywhere. It's not going to lock down. And then if I go to AI auto intelligent focus or whatever they call that, it's not going to move enough, and it's not going to adjust enough for me to keep track on the eye. And the focus points on the 7D and the 7D Mark II are so big that they're just focusing on the face, especially if I have a wide prime with a telephoto end on it. I can't get close enough to concentrate on the eye, so I need the software like Sony cameras to concentrate and track that eye, because it shouldn't be that hard, especially if you're taking portraits, because portraits don't have a lot of stuff going on in the background. They're usually images that you want to keep with a serene background, well, in my style, with the subject right there at the camera, so the camera shouldn't have to work that hard. The 80D doesn't seem to be having a hard time tracking me, so why doesn't the 90D have some technology like the Sony A7R3 or anything like that? We should have probably had this in Canon cameras, because Canon is showing off with a dual pixel autofocus. If they can do this in video with 24 frames a second, 30 frames a second, 60 frames a second, maybe even 120 frames a second on the 1DX Mark II, they should be able to do it in a photo mode. It should be no reason why we aren't able to get that. Now, I know a lot of my friends, they usually use live view and they'll punch in and stuff like that, but when you're working with an experienced model who knows what they're doing, going from pose to pose to pose to pose to pose, she doesn't have time, or he doesn't have time to stop and make sure the pose was right, or something's going to get off, especially if you're outside in the sun. Somebody's going to start squinting. It's going to get hot, it's going to get sweaty, everything's going to go wrong if you wait extra seconds just to get focused. I love the primes that Samyang and Rokinon give you, but they don't autofocus. So sometimes you got to really, really work at keeping your manual focus, because you're going to miss a lot of shots, especially if you have a wide open aperture prime. So these are some of the reasons why I think Canon should already have like eye tracking autofocus. And if you don't, if somebody's from Canon and they're watching this, just try to come out with some kind of eye tracking autofocus for the actual pictures. I know that you're not spending that much time on cameras, but it seems as though you have the technology. Well, you're not spending that much time on DSLRs and photographic cameras, but it seems like you have the technology already, especially if you're doing it for video, shooting all these frames. You should be able to do it for photos. It just should be a simple change, in my opinion, because you already have the technology with the dual pixel autofocus. If you ever do it in video, you should be able to do it in photographs like Sony can do it all the time. Now, their video focus is nowhere near their eye tracking autofocus for pictures, from what I've seen. And then you have Canon's video autofocus, which is way better than their portrait tracking autofocus. So they usually have good tracking for sports cameras on the Canon side. So if we can get that finally, refined and it's focusing on the eye during portraits, then we'd be happy campers. We'd see that Canon's working on something other than trying to dodge 4K on this. We see that they're trying to actually make their cameras better instead of doing other things. I know that they had that 5D Mark IV where you could finally adjust the autofocus after the picture was taken. Well, what if we can get the autofocus right before we take the picture? Just food for thought. Just things that we should think about instead of trying to, polish a turd and we accidentally misfocused on our model in the studio. What if we can get that focus tracking and just click up? Oh, it's tracking. 1.4, 1.2, 1.0. Doesn't matter what kind of aperture f-stop we're using. We know we're going to get what we want in focus because we have it tracking. And it's only one subject. Usually it's only one subject that you're taking a picture of when you're taking portrait photography. So it shouldn't be that hard for the camera to go from dual pixel autofocus video to one subject in your photos. This is Devin from CenturyFX Studios, and I hope you guys have a great day.